I don't know how many times we said this since Overdress, but Bushiroad is actually listening to our issues once again. And we also got some other Token Rambu cards.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another edition of Cardfight Update. Today, I was originally planning to just talk about some Token Rambu cards that were revealed for the Card of the Days, but apparently they got one day off this week, so we don't have a lot of cards to talk about. But luckily for us, Keita Mori did a Q&A with TCG Player, of all things, and it gave some interesting insights to certain questions and topics that Bushiroad is going to change going forward in Overdress, which is very important for us as a community and also for this channel in particular, because they covered a certain topic that we discussed in the past, which is great. But before we go into the details of that Q&A, let's first take a look at these new Token Rambu cards and see if there's anything interesting to note here, or we have to wait and see until next week to get a better taste of what Token Rambu has to offer. So first up, we've got a new grade 2, which is Kosetsu Samonji, and Kosetsu Samonji has the ability, although when this unit is put onto the Guardian Circle, cost discard a card from your hand, and this unit gets shield plus 10k until the end of that battle. So it can become a 15k shield. Now, interesting enough, this was the old G-Guardian from the G-Era version of Token Rambu, and interesting enough, they kept it as a protector unit with more shield. Now, it's an alright skill, because if you discard another unit with 5k shield or a grade 3, you actively gain extra shield value. It doesn't cost you any counterblast, it doesn't cost you any soul blast. It would have basically been the same as if you put the unit onto the Guardian Circle, only now you get some extra free shield out of nowhere. It's a nice addition, but probably won't see active play because it doesn't really do anything else than just gaining more shield. But if you need more shield, you got it in this card. Now, another unit that we've got, which is actually pretty interesting and pretty useful for one of the Token Rambu builds, is this grade 3 Tonbokiri. Tonbokiri has the ability to use a Vanguard Circle. During your turn, this unit gets power plus 2k. So it's a 50k attacker. Great. But the interesting part is in its second ability, which is other Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, when this unit is rest for a card's cost, stand this unit. This is great for the right line archetype from the set, not the trial deck, but from the set, because we've seen that that archetype can rest its own rearguards to give power to the Vanguard, which it wants to get because it needs to acquire a certain power threshold. So having a unit like this that immediately resends itself means that you don't lose out of offensive value. But on top of that, we also got a grade 2 triple R, which could rest your own units to minus your opponent's Vanguard with 5k power. Now, the interesting interaction that you can do with this is that you can first rest this with the Vanguard's ability to give 5k power to the Vanguard, then it stand itself, and now you can rest it again with the grade 2 to use its ability. This is great because now you can actually use multiple of these effects without needing to call new units in standing position to actually use their effects. And if you remember, that grade 2 triple R restands everything if you Persona Road that turn. So even though you then rest it for the second time with this grade 3, yes, it doesn't reset on its own ability because it's a once per turn, but thanks to the grade 2, you can then reset the entire board and then basically capitalize on everything at the same time, which is a nice interaction between these two cards that I think is an absolute vital engine piece to that particular playstyle if we're not gonna get more cards that do the exact same thing. Now, on the topic of generic good stuff, we also got this grade 1 Monoyoshi Sadamune, and Monoyoshi Sadamune has the ability continues in back row rearguard circle. When this unit's power would be increased by your trigger effect, double the value of that increase. So basically a trigger turn from a 10k to 20k, but it specifies double the value, so if we have other effects that already can increase the value of the triggers, this will then double that value as well. Now currently we don't have that, but maybe we would get that, so this is an interesting thing to keep in mind. And yes, it doubles the over trigger value as well, so it becomes 200 million instead of 100 million. So this just increased the overall power column as well, and to some extent it justifies the 7k body because it becomes a 27k booster, which is pretty good in those specific situations. And finally, we have one more grade 1 to talk about, which is Hyuga Masamune. And Hyuga Masamune has the ability, although when this unit is placed on the Vanguard Circle, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, look at the top card of your deck and put it on the top or bottom of your deck. So We got more Oracle Think Tank-like effects, and it's great. It works with the archetype from the trial deck, because that wants to manipulate the top deck to some extent, and it synergizes with the great one we just talked about, Monoyoshi Sadamune, because you increase the consistency of actually getting to your triggers. So, overall, good stuff that can work in any type of build, and we have to wait and see until more support to actually see how consistent everything is going to be. But that said, let's go over this new Q&A that we saw by TCG Player, because this is going to give some more insight, which has some very interesting information. So, let's switch up the scene. So this is the article that TCG Player dropped with the Q&A with Keita Mori himself. Now I will leave a link to the Q&A in the description of this video down below if you want to read it for yourself, because we're not going to read it word by word, we're just going to go over the general theme that's being discussed here. Now, the first part of the interview, it's what you would expect. Like the first question, do you believe that these changes will increase the popularity of Cards of Vanguard? They mainly talk about here what the changes are and everything that we already seen in the past few months, so I don't want to rehash on this. However, there's one interesting thing that I want to highlight on this particular part, and it is this sentence. Although the card pools of the clan fight formats Premium and V Premium will not be as frequently updated, they are definitely not a thing of the past, and we will continue to support them. So this basically confirms what we already knew, but I know that some people in the community are thinking that V Premium and Premium will die, they're not going to support it. This sentence basically confirms they're gonna support it. Like the clan fight is somewhat of a thing to the past, as we're now gonna transition to nation fight, but those particular formats themselves will stay existing and they will support it. Maybe not as frequent, but they are definitely gonna support it. If we go down, we have another question which has some interesting extra points, which is, with the change from a game with 24 clans to a game with 5 or 6 nations, do you envision each nation have multiple different playstyles? We have seen Oracle Think Tank, we have seen Shadow Paladin, Royal Paladin, Gold Paladin. Each clan has somewhat of their own mechanic, their own playstyle. Now going to one nation, do we lose these things? Now, this is somewhat of a confirmation what some of us suspected, as they answered, even though the game system has combined the clans into nations, you can find vestiges of the previous 24 clans in the cards from the Chakravarti Divine Dragon era. Also, you will be able to find new motifs that previously did not exist, as well as designs that look to be transformations of previous known motifs. So this not only confirms that we're going to see things from the past and we're going to see mechanics that we're used to, but now they can explore design space and art styles that they couldn't because they were confined to these 24 clan boxes, which they now finally broken open. And this is the whole speculation that I did on the channel, as well as different fight where we talked about our own top X amount of archetypes or aesthetics that we would love to see into Vanguard Overdress, now that it's more plausible for those things to exist. And on top of that, the more important thing is, this applies not only to art or illustrations, but also to the flavor of the card game's mechanics, which is my favorite part. As you guys know, I am a sucker for game mechanics, and I cannot wait to see more things like Alchemagic, Final Rush, Overdress, and that kind of stuff. Like, they basically confirms that we're gonna see more of this type of stuff, and I cannot wait for that. Now, the next question is, again, something we already know. They talk about the right line, as well as the changes to the rarity of the cards to make things more accessible. But then we get to an interesting thing here, that we already knew, but it's great to confirm this again for some people that have been misinformed, as they talk a bit about Premium here. So, will you expand on Premium? The new cards that will be added in 2021 are cards with the D or V icons, aka just the normal sets or the V collections that are gonna come later this year. That also means that as a format, all cards can be played, meaning GR cards can also be used, since they are also additions to the premium card pool. As the new nation cards with the D icons are different from cards with the V icons in that they can be used by multiple associated clans in the premium clan fight format, we would like to first confirm how these cards will affect the tournament environment. We definitely have our suspicions as to how it will develop, but as history is rife with examples of CCGs and TCGs where users have surpassed the expectations of the developers, we are taking great care to avoid making any foregone conclusions. This is something that's great that they confirmed, as we all know that there's no way that they can playtest every single aspect. They have like a design team that is X amount of people, whereas the community that actually plays the cards is probably thousands of times bigger and will find these niche things a lot quicker. But then also, in any case, we are considering the addition of new cards that will enhance the G-Series game experience, such as addition of new G-units. Please don't forget G-Guardians exist. I beg you. We also consider the reissue of cards that are hard to obtain. I think TIE Fighter will rejoice by this statement because he's been all about the reprints of X amount of cards, and we will proceed with both of these when we see the opportunity to do so. And then we see the release schedule, and then again in August, a premium product to be announced or to be determined. My biggest guess is that that's going to be a reprint set, a Fighters collection, no, not a Fighters, a Revival collection, because they already stated that we're not going to get new cards in 2021 for the premium format. So this is probably going to be a reprint set exclusive to the English side, which is great because certain cards definitely need to be reprinted. But now we get to the final thing of this Q&A, and this is the main reason why I wanted to talk about in this particular video, because everything that we just talked about is just basic stuff. We already knew most of this, and now we get another confirmation about this information. Some people have been spreading around misinformation. This once again nullifies that or shoves this out the window, because we get once again a confirmation by Keita Mori himself, the big honcho of Vanguard Overdress at this current day and age. So that's great. But this is brand new information, which is pretty good to hear, because they asked, will the overseas market receive the same promo cards that Japan receives? This has been an issue in the V-Series, leading to entirely different decks being used between the two languages. This is a thing that I've been preaching on this channel for multiple times with multiple videos, that the promo thing got out of hand with the V-Series, and it exploded with VBT11. We all remember the debacle of that thing, and with all the other promos that made decks way better, but we hardly saw any of those cards coming into the English side. So this is a serious issue that we still have problems with till this day. So this is Bushiroad's answer to this question. We have heard about the topic on the gap between promo cards in Japan and the other countries from fans all over the world. First and foremost, we would like to acknowledge this feedback from fans. Okay, so this is already great. They are listening and they know what we're saying and that we have an issue with this. The development in each language is not completely synchronized for various reasons. This is especially true for products that are made in collaboration with others, and there will be cases where the development will differ between languages. There are even cases where cards that don't exist in a Japanese edition are included in specific language editions as part of the localization. So this is something we already discussed on the channel. Like, when you do a collaboration with a certain product or a certain company, it's sometimes hard to then also localize it in a different country if that company doesn't exist there, or it has some copyright things attached to it. A good example is the thing with Bang Dream or with Token Rambu or with Monster Strike. Yes, they can do it in Japan, but it doesn't say that we'll bring it to the West because maybe they don't get the copyright license to publish it worldwide. However, in the case of the English and Japanese edition that have similar development, having promo cards that are essential components of deck construction only be available in the Japanese edition without it being localized in the English edition is not a desirable state of affairs. We will coordinate with the offices in North America and Singapore on measures to remedy this situation. So they not only acknowledge the issue that what we're confirming that we have with these promos, they also now acknowledge that it's actually an issue that they didn't want to happen and are now going to move forward and taking steps to fix this issue. Now, there are two ways how you can interpret this answer. First, you can say, we see the issue and we're not gonna make this happen ever again, or at the very least we're gonna take steps to never ever make this happen again. So moving forward, they can try to fix the promos themselves, that they either make promo cards just reprints or just not powerful cards, or at least the powerful cards will get an English localization version of that particular promo in whatever case that might be. This is one way that we can see it, and so far with the Overdress promos, most of them aren't really that great. Some of them are interesting and can be used, but as soon as Overdress hasn't been released in the English side, it's hard to say, or it's too early to say if they're just gonna bring them with other top deck promo cards or top deck promo packs or filler cards or that kind of stuff. We don't know. That's something we have to wait and see until Overdress actually gets released here. But the second thing how you can interpret it is that they're gonna go back and they're gonna rectify the issues that they did in the V-Series. So they're gonna start releasing older V-Series promos which were integral to their cards, aka VBT11 promos or Declared Sword Dragon promos or whatever X small deck that got a very good promo card that we never got. They might go back and actually print those cards in some extra products. A good option is that in future V collection sets, they're gonna introduce a box topper pack which will contain these exclusive Japanese promos that we never got in the West. Now, is this a thing they're gonna do? I don't know. It's pure speculation. Basically, the ball is now in their court. They said they're gonna take steps to rectify this. What those steps are gonna be, we don't know as of yet. But now it's up to Bushiroad to make their words worth something, because it's all great that they acknowledge it, and it's great that they say they're taking steps, but now we have to wait and see and actually see what these steps are going to be. I'm personally very hopeful that we're gonna see some good things coming from this answer, and either that being the actual release of the older promos, or at the very least that this won't be a problem in Overdress moving forward. With that said, that's basically everything that I wanted to talk and discuss in today's Cardfight update. Even though the reveals weren't all that exciting for Tokurambu, this Q&A shined the light on a lot of interesting topics, and mostly these promo issue that we had for a while, and I'm very glad that at the very least Bushiroad acknowledged this, because they acknowledged a lot of things and they were communicating with the community for a while during the Overdress reveals and going forward, but this was one of the small things that they hadn't really addressed so far, and now they finally did, and they showed that they're wanting to work on this problem as well. So who knows what we're gonna see in the future from this moving forward. But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this new news, what do you think of the new card reveals, as well as this Q&A. Again, if you want to read this Q&A for yourself on a more slower pace, or want to go read the other segments that we passed a bit, I will leave a link in the description down below that you can just read it for yourself. But with that said, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over patreon.com for making this video and everything else on the channel possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon as well. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!